Welcome back to The Hidden Logic as we continue our massive Week 11 investigation into the global food matrix today. In our previous video, we exposed the massive supermarket illusion and the terrifying agricultural seed monopolies operating globally right now. We proved that the incredible variety of independent brands you see is actually controlled entirely by a tiny group of corporations. But today, we must deeply examine the actual biological substance of the artificial food that these massive monopolies produce and sell. We are going to expose one of the most successful and completely deadly scientific conspiracies in modern human history today. We are talking about the massive global sugar cartel and the highly profitable, highly toxic processed food industry operating globally. To fully understand this massive deception, we must travel back to the 1960s and examine early academic nutritional science. During this specific time, medical scientists began noticing a terrifying and sudden increase in fatal heart attacks across the Western world. Two completely different scientific theories quickly emerged to explain this massive and sudden crisis in global public health at the time. A brilliant British scientist named John Yudkin argued that the massive exponential increase in refined sugar consumption was the primary cause. However, an incredibly influential American scientist named Ancel aggressively argued that saturated dietary fat was the actual biological enemy. Ancel published the famous 7 countries study, which cherry-picked specific global data to completely support his anti-fat theory. He intentionally ignored the data from countries that consumed high amounts of natural fat but had very low rates of heart disease. The hidden logic reveals that the massive corporate sugar industry secretly intervened to completely destroy the scientific truth and protect their profits. Recently discovered historical documents definitively prove that the Sugar Research Foundation secretly paid Harvard scientists massive amounts of corporate money. They were specifically bribed to publish fake scientific papers that completely minimized the extreme health dangers of highly refined, toxic sugar. These corrupt academic scientists intentionally shifted the absolute medical blame onto saturated fats to permanently protect massive corporate sugar profit margins. This fake corporate science became the absolute, unquestioned foundation for the official government dietary guidelines for the next 50 years globally. The government aggressively told the public to stop eating natural healthy fats and switch to highly processed, low-fat corporate alternatives immediately. But when food manufacturers completely removed the natural fat, the resulting food tasted absolutely like cardboard, and nobody wanted to buy it. To fix this massive flavor problem, the food corporations replaced the natural healthy fat with massive amounts of refined synthetic sugar instead. This historical manipulation completely transformed the global food supply into a highly addictive and metabolically destructive chemical nightmare for ordinary citizens. The massive introduction of high fructose corn syrup in the 1970s accelerated this global health disaster exponentially across the world. This extremely cheap synthetic sweetener was heavily subsidized by the government and pumped into almost every single processed product on the shelves. High fructose corn syrup is processed directly in your liver, exactly like liquid alcohol, causing massive internal organ damage over time constantly. It completely bypasses the natural biological systems and hormones that tell your human brain when your stomach is actually physically full. This creates a dangerous biological condition called leptin resistance, where your brain constantly thinks you are starving even after eating massive meals. And this brings us to a critical moment in our deep investigation, where I desperately need your direct personal perspective today. Let us pause right now, because I must know exactly how you feel about this massive institutional scientific corruption targeting your health. Go down to the comments right now and answer this very specific and highly controversial moral question for our awake community. If a food corporation intentionally bribes scientists to hide the extreme biological dangers of their product, should the executives face prison? Drop your detailed answer in the comments below right now so we can expose the real modern threats together completely and openly. Your insight is absolutely crucial because the massive food industry currently operates exactly like the massive global tobacco cartels operated previously. They actively hire brilliant neuroscientists and expert chemists to engineer highly processed foods that specifically target your vulnerable brain chemistry constantly. They spend billions calculating the exact mathematical formula of synthetic sugar, processed salt, and chemical fat, known as the Bliss Point. This artificial chemical bliss point intentionally triggers a massive unnatural release of dopamine in your brain, creating severe, lifelong physical addiction. You are absolutely not lacking biological willpower. You are simply fighting against a multi-billion-dollar corporate biological hacking operation daily. We must also examine the incredibly dark psychology of how these massive food corporations intentionally target young, innocent children with their marketing. They use brightly colored boxes and friendly cartoon mascots to build deep psychological brand loyalty before the child can even legally read. They intentionally place the most sugary and toxic breakfast cereals on the lower supermarket shelves, exactly at the eye level of children. This is a calculated corporate strategy designed to create lifelong addicted consumers who will continuously fund the massive global food matrix. Furthermore, we must look at the massive and highly profitable connection between the processed food industry and global pharmaceutical corporations today. The massive corporate food matrix heavily relies on cheap, toxic ingredients that create severe chronic metabolic diseases like diabetes over time. The massive pharmaceutical industry then sells you incredibly expensive lifelong medical treatments to simply manage those exact same chronic metabolic symptoms entirely. They intentionally never cure the underlying biological disease because a completely cured patient is simply a lost customer for the pharmaceutical cartel. Big food makes you permanently sick, and Big Pharma keeps you permanently alive, simply to extract maximum financial profit from your suffering. It is an incredibly perfect closed-loop corporate economic system built entirely on the massive physical deterioration of ordinary working-class citizens. We must also expose the massive revolving door between government health regulatory agencies and the massive corporate boards of the food monopolies. The exact same government officials who approve these toxic synthetic ingredients often leave public office to take highly paid corporate executive jobs. They completely protect the corporate profit margins while ignoring the massive public health crisis, destroying the lives of ordinary citizens globally today. When you try to feed your children natural, healthy, organic food, the system aggressively punishes you with incredibly high artificial supermarket prices. The massive agricultural subsidies that we discussed previously only apply to the cheap, toxic, genetically modified crops used for processed junk food. Your own hard-earned tax dollars are being aggressively used to subsidize the exact massive corporate industries that are actively poisoning your family. We must aggressively demand the complete removal of toxic synthetic chemicals and high fructose corn syrup from the entire global food supply. We must demand absolute transparency in nutritional science and aggressively prosecute the corrupt academic scientists who accept massive corporate food bribes today. You have a profound moral duty to share this urgent alternative perspective with everyone who struggles with their physical health and weight. Share this video immediately on Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and every other social platform where your community actively gathers and communicates daily. We must break the powerful and dangerous illusion of modern nutrition and completely expose the toxic corporate food matrix to the blinding light. But synthetic sugar and processed food are only the very first generation of chemical weapons used in this massive biological war against humanity. What happens when the massive corporations decide to alter the fundamental genetic code of nature? Completely and irreversibly, forever, in secret laboratories. Next time, we will expose the terrifying reality of genetically modified organisms and the highly toxic chemical agriculture industry operating globally today. We will discover how chemical pesticides are completely destroying human biology and permanently poisoning the global environmental ecosystem perfectly for corporate profit. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and never stop questioning the artificial corporate narratives surrounding your physical health every single day. The toxic food matrix relies entirely on your continued public ignorance, so stay awake, stay vigilant, and keep tracking the hidden logic.